There are moments when losing an award is just losing an award. Then there are moments when that loss says something much bigger. Music, and in my opinion, that's exactly what happened with Claressa Shields at the BET Awards. Because this wasn't simply about one trophy ending up in someone else's hands. This was the moment where months of confidence, public expectations, and carefully built narratives finally met reality. Whether you agree with that reality or not is entirely up to you. I'm simply looking at what happened and asking whether the outcome actually surprised anyone who had been paying attention. Here's the thing that keeps bothering me. Somewhere along the line, the conversation stopped being about who had the strongest year and started becoming about who believed they deserved the award the most. Those aren't the same thing. Confidence is part of being a champion. Every elite athlete has it. They almost have to. Nobody reaches the top of professional sports by doubting themselves every morning. But confidence and entitlement aren't twins. There's a line between believing you can win and acting as though everyone else is simply there to watch you collect another trophy. Once you cross that line, people notice. And when the result doesn't go your way, they remember every single moment that led up to it. That's why this conversation isn't really about one night. It's about everything that happened before that night. It's your girl Claressa the GOAT Shields, and I'm here with Ebony. Hey, it's your boy Pat Poose, and right. Now I'm here with Ebony. If you followed Claressa over the last year, you've probably noticed something. More and more discussions around her stopped being about boxing itself. Instead of people debating her footwork, her performances, or her legacy inside the ring, the attention kept drifting somewhere else. Social media exchanges, public feuds, personal drama, headlines that had very little to do with the sport she's spent her entire life mastering. And that's never a good trade. Music, because here's something I think a lot of public figures forget. Attention isn't automatically good attention. You can dominate the conversation for months and still lose control of the story people tell about you. Those are two completely different things. Music. When I looked at the Sportswoman of the Year nominees, I kept asking myself one question. If I removed every accomplishment from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, even 2 years ago, and judged only what happened over the last 12 months, who had the strongest case? That's the only question that matters. Not who has the bigger legacy, not who has the louder fan base, not who trends more often. Who actually had the year? Because that's what these awards are supposed to recognize. And when you look at it through that lens, the outcome starts making a lot more sense. Music. A'ja Wilson wasn't just winning games. She was becoming one of the defining faces of women's basketball. MVP-level performances, championships, major endorsements, national magazine covers, cultural relevance beyond sports. Brands wanted her. Media wanted her. Fans wanted her. She wasn't simply succeeding on the court. She was expanding her influence everywhere else, too. That's difficult to ignore. Now, does that erase Claressa's accomplishments? Of course not. Nobody can erase what she's already achieved in boxing. Her resume speaks for itself. That's not really up for debate. But that's exactly why I think some people confuse two completely different conversations. One conversation is about all-time greatness. The other is about who owned the last year. Those are not interchangeable. And honestly, I think that's where expectations became disconnected from reality. Because if someone spends months talking as though the award is practically guaranteed, eventually people begin measuring those words against the actual results. Music, that's human nature. When the result doesn't match the confidence, suddenly everyone starts replaying the months leading up to it. Every interview, every tweet, every public appearance, every moment where certainty was presented. Before the vote even happened. Then the award goes somewhere else. That's when the internet starts connecting dots. Now, before anybody misunderstands me, this isn't about celebrating someone else's disappointment. I don't think there's anything impressive about tearing people down just because they lost. That's easy. What's actually interesting is asking why public opinion seemed to shift in the first place. Because if you go back a couple of years, most conversations around Claressa centered around respect for her achievements. Lately, the conversations sound completely different. That's worth paying attention to. Not because critics suddenly appeared out of nowhere, but because reputation doesn't usually change overnight. It changes one decision at a time, one headline at a time, one unnecessary controversy at a time, one public reaction at a time. Eventually, those moments pile up until people stop separating the athlete from everything happening around the athlete. Whether that's fair or unfair is another discussion entirely, but it's reality. And reality usually matters a lot more than intentions. One thing I've learned watching public figures is this: people rarely remember every detail of your accomplishments. They remember how you made them feel. If they associate your name with excellence, they'll defend you. If they associate your name with constant drama, they'll expect more drama every time you appear in the news. That's the reputation trap. Music, and once you're inside it, climbing back out becomes much harder than most people expect. Laughter. Here's what I think is lost in all of this. People keep framing this as if critics suddenly decided they don't like Claressa Shields anymore. I don't think that's what happened. I think people simply became exhausted by the gap between the image being projected and what they were actually seeing unfold. There's a difference. Every champion has an ego. That's almost a requirement if you're competing at the highest level. You have to believe you're the best before anyone else does. But the smartest champions also understand timing. They know when to talk, when to stay quiet, and when to let their performances speak louder than their posts. Lately, it feels like the conversation has been moving in the opposite direction. Instead of letting victories dominate the headlines have been dominated by everything surrounding the victories. Music, and that's where perception starts changing. Think about how quickly narratives can shift today. One interview leads to another headline. One social media post sparks another debate. One public appearance gets dissected from 10 different angles. Before long, people aren't even discussing your profession anymore. They are discussing your brand. That's a dangerous place to be, because once your personal brand becomes more controversial than your actual career, every future success has to fight through layers of public opinion before it even gets recognized. That's not just true in sports. It's true everywhere. The funny part is that reputation, music, usually changes quietly. There's no single moment where everyone suddenly decides they've had enough. It happens little by little. Every week adds another conversation. Another clip, music, goes viral. Another argument starts. Another reaction creates another reaction. Eventually, you wake up one day and realize people aren't talking about what you've accomplished. They are talking about what you've become known for. Those aren't always the same thing. And that's exactly why I don't believe this award result happened in some kind of vacuum. Awards are voted on by people. People are influenced by perception. Perception is influenced by everything they see throughout the year. Whether anyone likes that reality or not doesn't really matter. That's music, how public recognition has always worked. Now, I already know what some people are going to say. They should only judge athletic performance. Music, in a perfect world, sure. But that's never actually been how these awards work. Sports have always been bigger than statistics. They're about influence, visibility, impact, leadership, cultural relevance, the ability to represent your sport beyond competition itself. That's why endorsements matter. That's why media appearances matter. That's why public image matters. It's not because those things, music, replace athletic success. It's because they become part of the overall picture. And if that's the standard we're using, then it's fair to compare everything, not just what happened inside the music ring. When you look across the nominees, some athletes spent the year expanding their audience, building partnerships, representing their leagues, and creating music, positive momentum around their sport. That's a strong argument. Meanwhile, if the biggest conversation surrounding another athlete revolve around online disputes and off-the-field headlines, people naturally start asking different questions. Again, you don't have to agree with those questions, but pretending they don't exist doesn't make them disappear. One thing I've noticed over the years is that audiences are getting smarter. They are less interested in being told who deserves praise. They want to decide for themselves. That's why trying too hard to convince people you're the obvious choice often has the opposite effect. If you constantly remind everyone that you're supposed to win, you're also raising the expectations, they'll use to judge you. And expectations are incredibly unforgiving. Once you create them, you don't get to complain when people hold you to them. That's why I wasn't shocked by the reaction after the BET Awards. Music, the award itself, became almost secondary. The biggest story was the contrast. Months of certainty, one final result. That's what people were reacting to. Music, not simply the loss. The contrast. And if we're being honest, sometimes silence creates a stronger statement than any acceptance speech ever could. Music, Because when everyone expects one ending and reality delivers another, people immediately start re-examining everything, music, that happened beforehand. They ask themselves whether they missed something, whether the public conversation had drifted too far away from reality, or whether the outcome simply reflected what had been building behind the scenes all along. Personally, I lean towards that last explanation. Not because I think one award defines anyone's career. It doesn't. Great athletes stay great regardless of trophies, rankings, or public opinion. But public perception does matter, especially if you're trying to become more than an athlete. Especially if you're trying to become a brand. And brands live or die based on trust. The moment people begin questioning authenticity, every decision gets viewed through a different lens. That's just how audiences work. They don't judge isolated moments. They judge patterns, music, and once people believe they've identified a pattern, changing their minds becomes one of the hardest things any public figure can do.